Hello and welcome to Bookish Brits. I'm Rex, and this month I wanted to talk about how much I love classics. Because I do. I absolutely freaking adore them. But there is a hole in my knowledge, and that is Henry James. I've never read anything by Henry James. I've never seen any movies of his books, and there are plenty of those. Nothing. It's a giant gaping hole in my knowledge. So this summer, I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to read both The Wings of a Dove and Portrait of a Lady, and I will come back after the summer and let you know what I thought. The reason I'm doing this is because I do genuinely love classics. Edith Wharton is probably one of my favourite writers of all time, and I've already spoken before on this channel about how much I love Jane Austen, which seems like, I mean, why wouldn't you love Jane Austen? But it seems like, the Henry James hole is a big one in that literature canon. But the reason I love classics more than anything else is the language. I find in most of whether it's Elizabeth Gaskell or Dickens or Wilde or, even like Shelley and even the way Bram Stoker writes, there is something beautiful about novels from the 17 and 1800s that are they're like language porn, and I love it. I love that they take 300 pages to tell you something simple, or every sentence has nuance and color and depth and life. And I get, for some people it's long-winded, it's boring, it can be a trudge, and some people are like, oh my god, Thackeray. I really do not get along with Thackeray. I find him really, I just couldn't do it. And then Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which my dad insisted that I read, which is a horrible book, by the way. Have you read Tess? It's not a fun story. It's not good. I really don't know why he got me to read it, but he was like, you should really read this. No, didn't gel. So it's not that I love all of them unconditionally. Like, I have my favourites and I have the ones that really, but there's something as a generality about them, in terms of the richness of the language and the depth of the character development and I often talk about world building when it comes to fantasy, but there's an element of beautiful depth in a lot of classic literature because, we didn't live in that time, and yet something about the way they write and the effort and time that it takes to read these books place us in those eras and get us to imagine what was the world then, in a way that fantasy strives to do now, to put us in something completely different. But I feel like often when I'm reading the stuff that I'm going to just say is pop fiction, like the easy to read and genuinely quite fun stuff that I really enjoy, and I've reviewed lots of in this channel, sometimes I'm missing, I wonder in the weird head that I have, that in 100 years when someone is reading, if they'll be reading someone like Sophie Kinsella back, I don't know, will they be able to picture our world in quite the same way that I can when I'm reading Dickens, and the view I have of Dickensian London is so entrenched in my head. And maybe that's because I grew up in London and I've been, you watch Oliver Twist as a kid and then you read it, it's so entrenched in my head, but when you read Dickens, it's so easy to picture his London and his world, whether that's from Bleak House or Little Dorrit, and there's something wonderful about that. And I do think, will we still have that? And then we do get great, it's not that we don't have great, in-depth, wonderful authors now, but I just feel with this loveliness of time and space, the things that survive 200-300 years of critics and printing and all of that, are at a general level pretty damn good. And because we're not seeing like we do now with fiction, where we see everything, we've got the benefit of time to distill down what is good. And what we have now in Western literature is this really lovely canon of classics. And sure, I don't get along with all of them, but they do something, I've been rambling, they do something beautiful, and I miss that. And therefore, when I think about the fact that I've got a big hole like Henry James, and I might not like him, but I feel the need to plug that gap. And also, in some ways, reading classics takes me out as much as fantasy does. It takes me out of now. And sometimes we all need a little bit of escapism. And looking back, for me as a historian, is really interesting. And these let me experience a piece of life, how through the lens of these authors. So I will let you know how I get on with Henry James. And thank you so much for listening to me ramble. Bye.